So we'll first try to create a fresh sheet in Tableau so that we can create a new visual on it. So Tableau allows you to create one visual on one sheet. So in order to create a new sheet, this is the button that you need to work upon. Once I click on this, you can see I'm landing on to a new page where I'll be able to create a new visual. The same thing can be achieved with the help of this button on the toolbar. This is the new worksheet button which will allow us to create a new visual. Now that we are on this fresh sheet, let's try to create a new graph. We have seen a bar graph already. Let's try something related to the maps because Tableau offers you to build maps where you can plot the geographical data. Let's say I want to see what is the sales done by each of the state. So I dragged the state and dropped it onto the rows. Similarly, let me scroll down and fetch the sales variable and let me drop it onto columns. Now once I get this kind of a graph, you can see it defaults to the bar graph, given that this was also an applicable graph. But I also want you to observe that the map related graphs are now enabled because they too are suitable on this data. So let's try to change this simple bar graph to a symbol map. There are two options available related to the maps, where one is the symbol map and the second one is a field map. We'll try out both of them, but let's try out the symbol map first. So as soon as I click on the symbol map, I want you to observe that there are certain changes that happened on the screen. For example, I did not put this latitude or longitude into the rows and columns, right? This gets populated automatically as you select the map related graph. And I want you to observe that these were the auto-generated variables. So as soon as Tableau observes that there are certain geographical location related variables, like in our case, we had country, state, city, postal code, where the data type was a geographical icon. So in that case, Tableau will automatically populate the latitude and longitude columns for you, wherein we can use these columns automatically, which get used. Tableau offers you the latitude and longitude columns automatically, which get used when you are building map related graphs. So now if you see, I get to see some sort of customizations applied onto this graph. For example, if you see, there is a detail icon associated with the country variable. Did I pull up the country variable? No. Tableau did that automatically as soon as it realized that the states that were present in this variable all were belonging to the United States country. So in order to plot the states, it had to include the country variable as well. So within the country United States, it has populated the various states, and this is the kind of graph that it has generated. Where I want you to observe that we are getting circles in order to represent how much was the contribution given by each of the state towards the total sales that was achieved by the superstore. So if you see here, this is the size icon associated with sum of sales, which means that the size of the circle is indicating the total contribution done by that state. So if you see here, California is the state which shows the largest circle, and there are many other states which are showing very small circles. Now, this is called as a symbol map, where we use symbols, in our case circles, in order to represent the data. But this is not a completely customized kind of a graph, right? So apart from the customizations that Tableau has already applied onto this map, let's try to add some more customizations. For example, currently our data is being shown in the form of circles. By default, the shape of the marker is a circle, but you can easily change it to this option. So if I say I want to display the markers in the form of squares, I can do that, and you can see the shape has changed to squares. But more than the marker, I would like to change the size of the marker. So if I click on this size option, you will end up getting a slider. If you see, the slider is showing a smaller position right now, but if I increase the position of this slider, you will see we end up getting larger circles. So we can use this option to ensure that the markers are very clearly visible. So now we can clearly see that California is the state which shows us the largest circle, and there are many other states like Wyoming, Montana, etc. which show us very small circles, which means that these states are contributing very less to the overall sales. Whereas states like California, New York are contributing the maximum. So that's the use of the size option from the marks card with respect to the maps related graphs. Of course, we can also change the color, but this will only simply change the color of the markers. So if you want to show it using any other color, let's say I'm selecting green, this is the output. So there are many customizations that we can do apart from the color and the size. We can also label this graph. So currently it's only the circles and the size that is indicating how much is the sales that the state is contributing to. But let's say I also want to label it. All I need to do is just check this option related to show mark labels. And you will see that all the state values, and you can see all the values for the sales are being displayed. So you can see what is the highest value that a state is contributing, and given that we have also applied the labels, you can see each and every label might not get displayed for certain states like the smaller ones over here. So let's say if I want to display all of these values, all I need to do is check this option here which states allow labels to overlap the other marks. Now as soon as I check this, can you observe? It is now displaying the values for each and every state even though the state is very small. We also have certain options where we can show only maybe the min and max values. So if I do that, let me show you, this is the maximum value and this is the minimum value. But I would prefer showing all of the values for now. So let me select that option. Yeah. And let me also allow the labels to overlap the other marks. Now, even though, this graph has fitted into the screen with the entire United States as a country, and apart from that, certain other states as well. But you also get these kind of options here on the map, which allow you to zoom in and zoom out. So as soon as you click on this plus icon here, you can see I'm zooming in into the center of the map, whereas the zoom out option is available to help me zoom out from the map. But there are certain other options also available. Let's say, for example, if while giving the presentation, I want to focus on the east region of United States. So we have the pan option available here. You can see this icon here. Once I select that, I can actually pan onto the region. So now that I'm focusing on the east region, I can now click on this plus icon here and you will see I'm able to focus only on the east region of United States. So using this pan option, you can just adjust the graph and locate a particular state which you want the audience to focus upon. So those are certain options that you can definitely use while working onto the map related graphs and charts. For now, let me adjust this graph in such a manner that all our states are visible. So this is one of the ways in order to visualize your data where geographical locations are included. But let me tell you that in order to visualize map related graphs, you'll always need an internet connectivity, because Tableau fetches all of these maps from OpenStreetMap. And it also gives you multiple themes that you can actually use while visualizing these graphs. So let's say, for example, just to show you, we have the maps option here in the menu, within which we have this background maps. Now you can see by default the light theme is selected. But suppose if I want to go ahead with some other theme, all I need to do is just click on that option. So this is the normal theme, where you also get to see certain water bodies colored over here, and there are other options as well. So let me show you a couple of them. So the dark mode will change the background color to dark, and here while you work into the dark mode, just ensure that whatever color you choose in order to show the marker should be of a lighter shade so that it is clearly visible. But yeah, apart from that, we also have, let's say, the satellite mode, which is also a very good visualization that you can use over here while displaying the maps. So it's up to us to choose a particular theme from the many themes that are available. But as I said, we need to have internet connectivity while working on to maps, because it loads from the internet based on the latitude and the longitudes that it is going to use. So for now, I'll stick to the original mode, which is the light theme, and let me change the color back to the blue shade. So this was our very first map visual that we created, where what we tried plotting was state-wise what is the contribution to the overall sales. Now let's move on towards a new sheet where we will try to work upon the filled map, which is the other type of map available in Tableau. This time let me look at the profit that is contributed by each of the states. So let me again drag the state variable and the profit variable. And yes, this is again a bar graph that it gave me by default, right? Now, while you look at the bar graph present on the screen, I want you to observe that this time your 0 is somewhere in between, right? On the axis, it is not at the very left hand side, but in between, because we are looking at a variable like profit, where the values could be giving us profit as well as loss. So there are bars which are also going towards the left hand side, which indicate that these are the states which are giving us the losses and the rest of the states are giving us profit. So now that this is a bar graph, let's try to change it to the filled map. And the filled map will allow you to fill a map with colors, where the colors and the intensity of the colors are going to actually talk upon how much is the value that is contributed by each of the state. Now, as soon as colors become applicable, you know there is a color legend that is going to appear for you, right? So this is the default color scheme that it has applied here, where you can see the color is a diverging color palette which converges from orange to dark blue. So you can see that the states which are giving you losses are denoted using the orange shade. There is a gray shade that appears here which is indicating values pretty close to 0. And as you go on towards higher profits, you can see the color changes to dark blue. So this is where I can clearly observe that California is probably the state which is giving me the maximum profit, and Texas is the state that gives me the maximum loss. But yeah, let's make this graph more meaningful. Now if you observe, latitude and longitude is again in the rows and columns, right? Auto-generated. I did not put it there. But as soon as I selected a map related graph, this got populated here. You can see details are still being shown with the help of country and the state, where the entire United States graph has been loaded, within which it has plotted various states for us. And the sum of profit is being shown with the help of colors. Now, let's try to edit these colors. Of course, you can also increase the opacity level to 100 so that you get the brightest of all the shades. But let's talk about the various color palettes that are available. Previously, when we looked at the bar graph, if you remember, we saw specific color palettes where there were solid colors which could be given to different categories, right? But now what I want you to observe is we are trying to color on the basis of profit variable, which is ideally a numerical variable. So in this case, where you color with the help of a numerical variable, you end up getting diverging color palettes because the colors will change gradually as the values increase or decrease. Whereas in case of a categorical variables, you get those solid colors like we saw in case of the previous graph where we tried coloring on the basis of category or region kind of variables. So now that we are coloring on the basis of a continuous numerical variable, which is profit, these are the various color palettes that are available. You can choose whichever you want, but what I want you to observe is all of them are kind of diverging, either a single shade or there are multiple shades together. Given that we are looking at a variable like profit, I would like to go with the red and green diverging color palette because I want to display the loss related values using red and the profit related values using green. Now I also have these options available here which can help me customize this a little bit. For example, stepped color will give you typical steps where you can decide how many number of steps you want. So if I keep on increasing this value, you can see the number of steps in this color palette are increasing. But I usually prefer the diverging color palette because it looks like a continuous flow. You can also reverse the color scheme. So let's say green would be the color that can be used to represent the loss related states, and red would be the color for the profit related states. But that's usually the opposite, right? So let me not do that. I'll prefer red for the loss and green for the profit. You can also use full color range. So right now if you see, the brightest shade or the darkest shade of red is not being used here because the loss related value is not that very high. Okay, but green is almost matching the darkest green shade here. That's because it was a high profit value that we have got here. But if we want to enforce that I want to use the darkest shades that are present in this color scheme, I can use this option, and you can now see that it will use the darkest shade of red. So let me click on OK or apply in order to apply this changes to this graph, and you can see the map has changed the colors. So we can see that Texas, which was the state that gave us the maximum loss, is now represented using the darkest shade of red. Whereas California, which was the state that was giving us the maximum profit, is being represented using the darkest shade of green. Yes, there is a slight shade of gray that you can observe over here for these kind of states where there were, very less values that we can see. But most of the states seem to give us profit because you can see green is the major color that we observe across all of these states. So now that we have colored this graph as per our requirement, we can also feel free to label it. So let me check this option of show mark labels, and you can see all of these values have been labeled. But now the problem is I am able to see the labels which are representing the profit values. But I'm not able to, immediately recognize which state is each of the value pointing to. So if you want, you can also drag the state variable onto label, and you can see the states are now being labeled with their names. At the same time, I also want to display the profit related value. So let me drag and drop profit as well onto the states. Let me drag and drop the state variable in order to So as soon as I apply the labels, we got to see the profit related values for each of the state. But what if I also want to display the state names? Because currently it is difficult for me to relate to which state is each of the value pointing to. So in that case, let me drag the state variable as well and drop it onto the label. And this is where you will now observe that it's only the state names that are being displayed as the labels. But I wanted to display even the profit related values. So let me drag the profit variable as well and let me put it onto the labels. So now I want you to observe that both the state name as well as the profit value is being displayed on each and every state. So this is what makes it more meaningful. Yeah, although we can observe that it is not showing the labels for each and every state given the size of the state was very small, we can ensure or enforce that with the help of this checkbox here, right? So now it will display all of the labels. Even though they overlap on each other, it makes it look a little cluttered. But if we try to zoom in onto that particular section, we will be able to see those values properly. So let's say this east region looks a little cluttered, but as soon as I zoom in into that area, you can see the values are clearly readable. So this is how you can make use of a filled map as well in order to display the values in the form of colors. And many of the times when we look at values like sales or profit especially, it is very useful to use a filled map over a symbol map, given that the colors and the intensity of the colors help us understand the map more meaningfully than a simple symbol map. So this was about the map related graphs that you can plot using Tableau, and I just want you to remember that latitude and longitude automatically get applied into the rows and the column shelf as soon as you select the right type of map. And also another reminder that you will need internet connectivity whenever you are trying to generate any map related graphs or charts. The next topic that we'll move on towards is some other types of visualizations. Let's say I want to work upon a graph where I am trying to look at the category and the subcategory wise sales. So let me drag the sales variable as well into the columns. So this is a very simple bar graph that it has generated for me again, where we can see that there is category, subcategory, and the bars are representing the value for the sales. So you can have multiple variables included into the x-axis and the y-axis, and that's the point that I'm trying to highlight here. So let's say along with the sales variable, if I also want to include the profit variable, I can drag and drop it over here. And I want you to observe that there are two graphs that got created, where one of the pane is indicating the sales and the other pane is indicating the profit. So you can have these kind of multiple variables included into a single view. So currently, given that we have chosen two categorical variables, where the first one is the category and the second one is the subcategory, I want you to observe how Tableau automatically and cleverly divides this entire set of values into different panes. So those subcategories which were related to furniture are put into a single pane. Those subcategories which are related to the office supplies are put into a single pane, and those categories which were related to technology are being put into another pane. So this is where we are dividing the entire data pane wise in order to distinguish between the categories. The same thing gets applied for the profit variable as well. So this is where we are displaying two different values into a single view. Feel free to remove any of them if you don't want to use it. But the point that I am trying to highlight here is that as soon as you work upon two different graphs included into a single view, there are two different options that you get in order to apply onto the different graphs. Let's say, for example, if you look at this entire marks card, the options that are visible over here will be applicable to both the graphs. Like for example, if I apply the labels, I want you to observe that labels are getting applied now on both the graphs. But suppose if I want to customize only one of the graph out of these two, I can select on these options which are available here. For example, I want to customize the graph which includes the sum of sales. Whatever application of customization that I'll do here will be only applied onto this graph, and the other graph will remain unaffected. So let's say if I want to change the colors for this particular graph, I can do that. So let's say for example, I want to color this graph on the basis of category. Let me drag category and drop it onto color. Did you observe? It is only this graph that got colored. So each of the category is getting a different color here. And you can clearly observe the color legend has also appeared here, which indicates that furniture is represented using blue, office supplies is represented using red, and technology is represented using the green color. At the same time, the profit variable is not displaying any changes in terms of the colors. So in case you want to color that as well with the help of the category variable, you can do that. Or maybe if you want to color it on the basis of, let's say, the profit variable, which we are trying to display as the values as well. If I want to color it on the basis of profit, you can see that again the diverging color palette has appeared, where the default one, the orange to blue, has appeared as the set palette, but we can obviously change that. As you know, we can go to edit colors and we can choose whichever diverging palette we want. I'll again choose the red green for now, and I'll apply it, and you will be able to see those changes applicable onto this graph. So the point that I'm trying to highlight is when you are using multiple graphs into a single view, you get different customizations applicable for each of the graph. Either you do it commonly for both the graphs, or you do it individually for whichever graph you want to customize. So that's another good point of Tableau that you can definitely use when you are viewing related but different data into a single view.
Like this video, subscribe to our channel and comment on the concept you want to learn next.